السيد إيوان ماكنتوش. ومستر إيوان هو المدير العام والمؤسس لشركة نوتش ليميتد، واللي هي شركة موجودة في أستراليا واسكتلند. الشركة بتعتمد على إنتاج المواد التعليمية وتنزيلها للجامعات وللمدارس، بعدين يعملوا ريسيرش عليها إنه كيف كان تأثيرها. ففي كرييتيف بارت كبير بالمجال اللي هم عم يشتغلوا فيه. نتمنى اليوم إنه إن شاء الله تكون الاستفادة من عندكم أيضا من مجتمع التعليم العربي، تكون الاستفادة جيدة. وطبعا اللقاء حيكون باللغة الإنجليزية، فنتمنى إنه هذا ما يكون عائق. راح نحاول إذا كان في مجال إنه يكون في بعض الترجمة، لكن ما بنوعدكم لأنه ما حيكون في ترجمة فورية. فإن شاء الله إذا كان ممكن إنه ننزل بعد اللقاء اليوم، ممكن ننزل بعض من المقتطفات نكتبها باللغة العربية أو نعملها كبوست. Mr. Ivan, the floor is yours. Go ahead, please, and take the mic. We're all looking forward to this presentation and to this webinar. After you've finished your presentation, we'll open the floor for some questions and answers from the audience.
Sure, and thank you both for the invitation to join you this evening. And thank you to everybody who has come along on a Friday evening, quite late at night for you. Normally at 7:30 in the evening I am collapsed on the sofa, having worked with other people's children or other adults and then looking after my own and getting them to bed. So congratulations to you all for making it at this time. And I wanted to give a relatively short talk on how I and my team try to make innovative ideas happen. What innovative ideas? It could be innovative ideas around teaching and learning, pedagogy, or it could be innovative ideas to do with technology. It might even be an innovative leadership initiative. Whatever idea that you might have and you want your school or your community to adopt it, how do you get that kind of focus? How do you get that kind of collaboration happening in your community? And for me, the trick is the title of the talk. It's making the main thing the main thing. And it sounds simple, that if you want to achieve something great, then you need to have incredible focus. And it is simple to say, but it's not simple to do. And to help drive this point home, I would love to ask you this question. So if you were writing this for your school or for your university, or for even your community, how would you complete this sentence? And you could even put this into the chat if you want to. We have a room chat, which some of you have been leaving messages in already. So if you wanted to, you could type in here what your objective for teaching and learning is, as a school, as a teacher in your classroom. And it's a question that when I pose it, a lot of people have difficulty answering. So in one school, you might find that 70 teachers give 70 different versions of the objective for learning and teaching. And for individual teachers, sometimes the objective for learning and teaching is not actually the objective, because I'm going to show you a slightly different question now as well. Our strategy to meet this objective is. And when I compare these two questions, our objective for learning and teaching and our strategy to get to that objective, now maybe you can begin to understand some subtle difference in the way that we state our innovation goal and how we go about achieving it. And understanding this difference has helped many of our teachers to take forward some incredibly ambitious change in their school communities. It comes down to these three words. So your objective, the strategies to get there, and the tactics. So one of our colleagues in the chat, the example in English, which I can understand, my Arabic is highly limited, shall we say, but thank you to the user who has put in integrate technology skills in education. So that's a good kind of objective. I want to I want to integrate technology skills in education. And if the person is okay, and you can let me know with a little smiley in the chat if you can, if you're okay with it, we could maybe take your words and play with them to show the difference between an objective strategy and the tactics to get there. What I wanted to explore was this scene that you can see in the background, or the photograph of the slide. So this is actually a photograph taken in the centre of my city, in Edinburgh, in Scotland. In the middle of our city we have beautiful hills, and this is an old volcano right in the heart of the city. And on a nice day, I love to take my family up to the top of it. And the objective on a day like that is to get me and my my two beautiful daughters and my wife to the top of that mountain. That is the objective. The objective is to reach the summit. But I would ask you, what are the strategies that are possible for getting there? And that's the interesting question. So the strategies include maybe working out which route we want to take. So I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter, and the first strategy is, well, let's choose a route. Now someone has said climbing as a potential strategy, and climbing is a strategy, but walking is a strategy as well. And if you're with a 5-year-old, you might say, climbing up the rocks is a little bit too dangerous, so we're actually going to do walking instead. You might also decide that we need to go early in the morning to guarantee our capacity to get to the top. So one strategy is leave early in the morning. And if you look at this photograph, you'll understand that my strategy failed because trying to get 3 girls out of the house in time is very difficult. And so it was late afternoon before we managed to start our walk. And when this happens, you're now halfway up the mountain and the sun is going down. Strategy is only so useful, and actually we have to go back to our tactics. And tactics are those tactics that I have learned as a climber, as a mountaineer, if you like. I know that if the sun is that low, we don't have a lot of time to get to the top. So the previous strategy I had of no climbing, just walking, let's take the easy route with the children, that strategy now changes. We're going to take the fast route to the top, which is also a little more difficult, a little bit steeper, a little bit more difficult to manage. And so tactics change, like with the weather. If it starts to rain, I'm going to use a different set of tactics. If it starts to come down with snow, I'm going to change my tactics once more. So the tactic is really close. It is the sub-steps of making the strategy. It's the tactics are the personal skill sets that the team has to make the strategy happen. If you have a team who has never climbed a mountain, and you have a strategy of taking the slow and easy route up this mountain, but the sun is coming down too early, the whole project is going to fail. We're never going to get to the top. Not because the objective was wrong, getting to the top is a good objective, not because the strategy was wrong, taking a slow route that's easy to climb is a good strategy, but because the team lacked the skills in the first place, they didn't have the tactics that they needed to make it to the top, and therefore they failed. And so getting this mix of objective, strategy and tactics is really important. The objective is something that you, as an innovator, can plan. The strategy is something that you, with a team, can plan. But at the end of the day, a great idea with a team that lacks the skill set is going to fail. And so the development of a team who have skills, who have tactics, is vitally important in getting any idea to succeed in the end. And therefore, when we are creating objectives, we need to be cognizant of the skills that our teachers have, that our learning community has in order to get there. Now let me just take this metaphor a little bit further. This is me in the summer with my daughter Katrina. She's 8 years old, and she looks incredibly unhappy in this photograph because we had walked nearly 2 hours, and she thought at this point we were at the top of the mountain. And when I said, no, we're not at the top, this is just the beginning of the mountain, we're just at the bridge to cross over and begin the proper climb, she was not happy. So the first thing is that sometimes when I have an objective, in this case Katrina did not share the same ambition, the same objective. She didn't really know how long a real climb takes. In her mind, 2 hours is a long time, and therefore 2 hours is long enough to climb a tall mountain. But in my mind, with more experience, I know that a mountain is going to take 9 hours up there and back. And so because her perception of the journey was much shorter than the reality, she ended up disillusioned. And you can see in her face, she's not a happy girl at all. And so after that, all kinds of excuses start to come. She starts to need her shoelaces tied all the time because now she's lost the motivation. She thought that she was finished, but actually she's got all this distance to go. And worse still, she has no idea how far away the summit is. In fact, if you look at this photograph, those white dots in the distance on top of the hill, they look like small rocks. They're actually twice the size of her. And so she has no perception of distance and her motivation begins to go down. And this is where the journey begins to resemble an innovation journey in a school. As we push her on, and she's complaining, but we still push her on up the innovation mountain, and we get to this point. Now she can see the summit. She can actually see where she's going, but she still thinks it's close because she still doesn't understand that these rocks are 10 times bigger than they look here. When we've nearly got to the top, she does what all mountaineers do. You turn around and you start to look at the view. And what you see is another mountain peak. You start to say, what's that peak over there? Could we go and have a go? Could we go and climb that one instead? And this is what happens with technology in schools as well, or with innovation in general. We introduce an objective, but when things start to get difficult, we see another objective way over there. And it's much easier just to leave and go and explore that, we think. But actually the journey can be just as hard. In this case, if Katrina were to go back down the mountain and aim towards that small peak in the distance, she would have to get almost next to the mountain before she realizes that she needs a boat to cross over and climb up. It's up because it's on an island. At this point, we're almost there. We're almost reaching the summit. And again, this is where many people stop because it's incredibly difficult to climb over these very large rocks. So this is the point where we take the old route, and it's the hard route. Instead of taking the easy, quick road, we had to go round the back of the mountain. At this point, the mountain is so steep, it's a very dangerous gradient. To give you an idea of how dangerous this is, you can see the absolute cutting nature of the cliffs that we were trying to climb. And it's the first time I've ever seen my daughter really scared as we climbed up this mountain. But something magical happens. When you have this adversity, you climb through it and you reach the summit. And then you do what every mountaineer does. You hold on to your mountain. You hold on incredibly tightly to your mountain, in fact, because you've made this a huge achievement. You've put in a huge effort, and now you've made it to the summit. And this is the point where you look on top of the summit. There's this little map on the wooden, on the stone bricks, and the map tells you what all the other mountains are around you. And at this point, you start to plan the next mountain climb. You start to plan the next innovation. And if you're lucky, you get surprises. It's not just the aim that we thought we would achieve that brings real happiness, but it's also the surprise. So the surprise here is that I only took my 8-year-old up with me, and we arranged by mobile telephone that my wife and my father would come up a little bit afterwards and meet us maybe at the bottom of the hill. But little Anna, who in this photograph is only 4 years old, she managed to achieve a 5-hour climb and come up almost as far as we had. And so this was the surprise on top of the achievement. And it only happens because we aim higher than we think we're able to get to. So when you have an innovation in learning and teaching, it is actually difficult to bring everyone with you, because someone is going to think that it's too complex, too difficult. What is it that we can do? Well, we talk about horizons. And the first horizon is really important. This all comes from a long time ago, actually. In the 1990s, McKinsey created what they call the 3 horizons for business. And we've been using the 3 horizons in education for innovation strategy with huge success. The first horizon is where you need to take note of where you are today. So you do your research in the first horizon. When we're working with a teacher or a group of teachers or a leadership team to find an innovative idea, often they will telephone us with the innovative idea. They'll say, we want to go one-to-one computing, we want to use the cloud, we want to use apps for education, we want to do all these amazing things. They've already decided on a solution without having found a problem in the first place. So the first horizon is really about defining the challenges you have. What are the potential peaks you're going to climb? What are the potential mountains you're going to climb? What are the potential problems you can solve? What are some of the opportunities you could take advantage of? You can do desk research to find that out. You can go and visit other schools. You can go to conferences like the GESS conference next week. You can meet people. You can have video conferences like this. Doing your research is more than just running onto Google and searching for what you know the answers to. It's also about getting out there, going out into other environments to see how other people do what they do, and taking notes as you go. So learning how to be a good interviewer is important. And if you meet me next week, I'm coming to Dubai on Sunday night, and when you meet me, very often, if you've got a good story to tell, my camera comes out and I'll say, you know, can you just tell me this story? I want to share it. And when I interview you, I will ask you very open questions, because I don't want to give a convergent question to get a convergent answer. I want to open the question up and get the best story out from you. So when you undertake an interview, you're able at that point to uncover clarifications. You're able to prove that what you thought the problem was does actually exist. And Sharifa in the chat has put an interesting point. You know, sometimes you don't aim to resolve a problem, but actually you're just trying to experiment, and through the experimentation you have a surprise innovation, and that's what takes your organization on. And that's a very good point. Sometimes great teachers have undertaken a change in their practice, and they've accidentally innovated. They've accidentally done something amazing. And the problem is they don't even know they've done something amazing because they're so busy in the moment that they've not noticed the changes. So asking good questions in an interview format is a really good way of getting these stories out and helping the innovator realize what innovation they've done. The reason we record the session is that sometimes, you know, when you record something, even on holiday, you take a photograph, and it's only when you look back at the photograph you notice something that you hadn't noticed at the time when you took the photograph. So we record the session because we notice something different the second time round. And not just interviews. Interviews mean that you ask the question and then you be quiet. You have to listen really carefully to the response. And recently I've been really enjoying getting into Otto Scharmer's work. Otto, O-T-T-O, Scharmer, S-C-H-A-R-M-E-R. He's a German psychologist who talks a lot about the stages of listening and the different levels of listening. And when you're interviewing, asking the good questions is a good thing, but learning how to really listen is equally important, and there's some good work there if you want to dive into that later. I am a huge fan of sketching what you see. Photographs are great, but photographs don't tell me what you found interesting. But if you sketch a detail of what you've spotted when you've visited another school or seen a video online, you're actually editorializing. You're making a decision, a choice about what it is you thought was important. And so we use sketches, particularly when we're observing classes with students, to try to better understand the dynamic, what's working well and what's working less well. And then this final piece of advice, this is a tactic, this is an ongoing tactic. I would encourage you all to get hold of a good notebook. I use these disposable notebooks from France. My wife is French, and I always walk away in the summer holidays with cases of these notebooks because they're the perfect size for noting down ideas as I have them, but also what's called a bug list. So everything that doesn't work, I put into a bug list. A bug is a mistake or a problem or an error. And so when I spot small things that don't work the way they should do, I write them down. And when I notice ideas that I have, I put them there too. And I can't remember who that was, but yeah, Sharifa says iPhone notes are taking over the notebook. The latest system update on iPhone notes means that you can also draw with your finger. So yes, you can sketch your bugs, you can sketch your ideas, but you can also take photographs and draw with your finger, all within the iOS Notes app. So yeah, there are wonderful digital tools now, but literally in the last couple of months that are really easy to use and manage to achieve that. And best of all, they're shareable with your team. The final thing that we do is we need a place to put these artifacts, and this is where we use what's called a war room. A war room is designed to be like a cocoon, a private, or not a private space, but a space where you have 3 or 4 walls that you can plaster with your notes, your sketches. If you do have digital photographs, we often encourage people to print those out and make them physical, because this war room, or yeah, an idea wall, you could use idea paint, so you could write on the wall. We also use really cheap foam board. It's the same foam board that people use to make model aeroplanes. It's very cheap, very light, and big. You can buy it 1 meter, 3 meters tall, and place them around your room, and it changes it from being a dry, uncreative, soulless boardroom into something much more adventurous and creative. The key here is that the team that you want to make your innovation happen, they need to see everything that you're thinking, and you need to see everything that they're thinking. So the wall, or in the war room, becomes the spatial memory for your team, and it allows everybody to be in the same picture. This works really well in the classroom as well, because we get students creating their own war rooms. We don't actually call them war rooms because of the negative connotation. We call them a project nest. And a project nest is where the students, like little birds, they bring back the twigs and leaves that they find. They bring the twigs and leaves of knowledge and put them on the wall so that everybody in their team benefits from the research of each other. It is a lovely idea. It changes the energy in your team as well. So I can only recommend doing that. So all of this is for the first horizon. And the first horizon is, the job of the first horizon is to find out, where are we today? What is the status quo? Where are the key problems that we have? Where are the key opportunities? And it's once you've defined those problems that you can move on to the third horizon. Not the second horizon, the third horizon. So the reason we go straight to the third horizon, it's the creative zone. It's where you paint a picture of the vision. If you were to solve all these problems from the first horizon, what would the vision in the future look like? If you were to take advantage of every opportunity in the first horizon, what would the third horizon vision look like? And you literally paint a picture of what it looks like. We use this as one structure that really helps people be creative and work out what they could create that would bring an innovation into land. So using the research and observation from First Horizon, first of all you decide what can we eliminate, what can we not do now, what is it we currently do that we should not be doing. Then raise, what would you raise the value of? What do you think is important but perhaps today is neglected? And if you were to raise the importance of it, people would notice it more, undertake the practice better. A good example of pedagogical practice that we nearly always need to raise the value of is feedback, student-to-student feedback. We need to raise the quantity and the quality of student-to-student feedback. So that would go in there. We're going to reduce the importance of the importance given to examination results. We're going to take away that stress, and we're going to instead raise the quality of feedback so that overall students do better. And then you're left with the question, what do we create? What are we going to create from scratch to achieve the vision that we've created? And the third horizon is all about focus. It's about creating an objective which in English we call a BHAG, a big, hairy, and by hairy like this we actually mean scary. It should feel audacious as well. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And when a goal is scary, it's scary because it's ambitious. And the one thing I love is, you know, in the Middle East in particular, you're not short of ambition. And I think that these big, hairy, audacious goals are what make the Middle East the Middle East. It's certainly what makes me feel makes Dubai Dubai when I'm visiting there next week. So for me, this 2x2 format is really useful for designing your innovations. And then finally, you undertake the second horizon. And the second horizon, as the picture suggests, is much more operational. It's about saying, here's the vision, but here's where we are today. And step by step, what might we do to get there? And the approach that we take is that everything that we do should only take 30 days to do. So we make instead of trying to get to the vision in one big go, instead of trying to make this hugely ambitious leap in one jump, we decide what could we achieve in 30 minutes. If we could achieve in 30 days, sorry, what could we achieve in 30 days? And in 30 days, can we make something that is nonetheless a full and complete attempt at something in our plan? It won't be perfect, but it will be good enough to get feedback. And that's what we call sprint and scrum management. And it's something that comes from the software technology industry. And again, it's something on which you can find plenty online if you want to find out more about it. What I want to do is hand over to the folk in the room and say, you know, if you have any questions, I would love to try and answer them. But hopefully I've given you some inspiration to get started with rethinking how you undertake innovations in your classroom, in your school or university, or in your community, and some practical framework in order to not just talk about great innovation, but actually make it happen. So thank you very much for your attention, and perhaps you can pose questions in the chat, or Sharifa can perhaps manage any questions that are coming through that I've not spotted. And if you have a question that you want to pose in Arabic in the chat, feel free to do that, and maybe Sharifa can translate for me.
Sure, thank you so much, Ewan, for this very interesting and inspiring session. Actually, I was thinking of one thing that when you jumped from the first horizon to the third horizon, I actually like that it is in a way not the common practice that we are always used to, that to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. But I want to ask you about the plan for the 30 days, and if you can give us some example of what can a team in the school achieve in 30 days, for example, to bring some innovation to the teaching and learning? In my mind, I'm thinking of particularly teaching the Arabic language in classes, because it is rather has been done in traditional ways. So what can we do in 30 days to make a difference or a step forward?
Yeah, in the chat box, I've just put a link to an iTunes document. If you can also search for the little book of Nanjing International School. Nanjing International School is a school in China that we worked with. They undertook a very innovative strategy with some very ambitious goals, and one of the goals was that, so they have two big objectives. One is to put student voice and choice at the center of everything they do, and the other is to burst the bubble of being an international school in China, because students felt that when you go to that school, you could be at an international school anywhere in the world, not just in China, and they wanted to change that. These are big goals for a school to try and take on. So when they prototyped, we actually described the prototyping journey in this little book that you can download for free and read. Some of the things that they did, for example, were, well, social entrepreneurship was identified as a strategy that both puts student voice and choice at the center, but which also, it also encourages students to go out beyond the walls of the school. So in social entrepreneurship, in 30 days, what can you do? Well, the first thing was they invited a social entrepreneur to come to the school. Really simple. Step one, just an initial look at what social entrepreneurship was, and they created some activity around that visit. But because it's not just a one-off activity, once you've done one 30-day run of activity, you pause for reflection and feedback, and you use the feedback and reflection to design what you're going to do next. So having had that initial visit from the social entrepreneur, the teachers were able to say, well, for the next 30 days, we're going to design a very simple social entrepreneurship program, a project. And the teachers designed that with some students over the next 30 days. They tested out small elements of it with students too. In the third iteration, they actually went on and undertook the project with students. And out of that, students created real social entrepreneurship companies, real social enterprises. And they were able to help women in Vietnam, I think, gain full-time employment for the craft work that they were undertaking, whereas before they hadn't been. So they were these, from a very manageable starting point, they were able to move their idea forward very quickly and successfully, because feedback was guaranteed every 30 days. And from a leadership perspective, it's a lot less risky to run projects that way, because every 30 days you have the opportunity to kill a project, to offer it feedback to make it better, or to change its direction. Whereas the traditional way of running projects, and I've noticed this, particularly in the Middle East, the traditional way is, let's set an incredibly ambitious goal with quite a long timeline because it's so ambitious, but then it becomes a lot harder to change the direction of a project or make small tweaks as you go. And so this sprint way of working, which comes from software development, just allows leadership to have a more hands-on role in terms of where a project goes without needing to micromanage it.
We have a question in the chat box from Dr. Noha, and she says that sometimes we face obstacles in implementing a project in the school or reaching a goal, because different team members will have different ambitions or maybe different point of views. So how to overcome that?
I think Dr. Noha must work in a real school or a real university, because that's a daily problem. That's just, particularly in education. I think every teacher has been so used to, for such a long time, to managing their own classroom, managing their own destiny and the destiny of their students. And when you have an innovative idea, the thing we try to avoid is just having another committee. I've never seen a statue to a committee, but I have seen statues to individuals who've led great ideas forward. And the reason for that is that committees will dilute creative ideas, and they will turn them from ambitious concepts into vanilla magnolia concepts that just look like every other innovation out there. So the challenge is one of two things. One is you do the problem finding, you do that first horizon research with the same team that you're going to come up with the ideas with. That's a good way because the team then understands why you want to take a particular direction, and you can persuade them more easily to come with you because they see the problem for what it is. The second way of doing it is that you develop the idea with one team, and when you've finished developing the problem, rather, with one team, you actually go and recruit another team to solve the problem. And this is where you say, here's the problem we've got, and I'm looking for a team of colleagues to come and help me solve it. And at that point, you've got a real positive buy-in from people who agree that it's a problem and want to help solve it too. But you have also asserted yourself as the leader of the innovation. And you've also set the vision because you've designed your vision. You've said, this is what the world looks like when we solve this problem. Who wants to come with me and solve it? And so that's also a really successful way to do it. Why would you have a second team for the ideation, for the creation of the idea? Because the first team, when it's done its research, still has assumptions. And the assumptions creep into ideas and actually stop people coming up with as big and audacious an idea as they could do. If you have a second different team develop the ideas to resolve the problem identified by the first team, then they test the assumptions of that first team in a really interesting way, and they ask the difficult questions that help them produce an even better idea at the end. And Sama's point, user needs are actually the most important here. When you're solving a problem for a particular group of people, and one of the techniques, one of the tactics we use is persona drawing. So draw a persona of the people, of the person for whom you're solving the problem, and every time someone from your leadership team gives their idea and they say, I don't think this is relevant, I think we should do it this way, you take out your illustration of their persona and you say, yeah, but look, here is Farah, our persona, and in Farah's world, this is the problem. And we're designing for Farah, we're not designing for you. And I think that is you don't have to do it quite as aggressively as I've just done it, but it's a good way to have a creative argument with people to help them understand why you're choosing a particular way to design your product, or your service, or your lesson, or your pedagogy.
These are very, very valuable and precious insights, really. And I thank you for your time with us today and with the insights that you shared with us from your experience and from what you're doing with the schools. So I'm going to ask the attendees in Arabic if anyone else have a question.
Of course.
قبل ما نختم لقائنا مع مستر إيفان، في أي سؤال حتى لو بالعربي تكتبوا لنا إياه وإحنا نقدر نحكيه. سماح تفضلي، بدك تاخذي المايك ولا بدك تكتبي في الشات؟ تفضلوا، إذا في سؤال ممكن تكتبوا لنا في الشات، لأنه اللقاء راح ينتهي خلال دقائق، فتفضلوا وحنعمل على ترجمة أسئلتكم. So Ivan, we're expecting a couple of questions from the audience. They might post it in Arabic, so we're giving them some time to type it in the chat box.
No problem. I think Sama wants to take the microphone to speak, maybe.
Sure, Samah will give you the mic. Just a second. Go ahead, you can speak. Press the talk button and speak.
Sama, you just need to press the talk button on the top left of your browser and we can hear you at that point. Okay, maybe the microphone isn't working.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. We can hear you now.
Yeah,
Hold down.
thank you. Yeah, that's clear. I think it didn't work before. It's okay now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, Mr. Mclntosh. We are so happy to have this chance with you. Thank you for Mrs. Hajat and Mrs. Mustafa. Thank you for them, and we are so happy to meet some points that we have to search about, and that's all. We are so happy, and inshallah we try to find some websites about your companies and to see what we have to support us in our teaching. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. And I don't know if you have a question that you wanted to ask, or if there's something that you wanted me to go into greater detail, but you know, I think one of the things about next week, I'm in Dubai, and it's a technology conference that's taking place largely at GESS, and there's so much innovation already in the Middle East. I think one thing I would love to hear more of are those stories from your classrooms and from your schools. They might feel like small stories, but actually there's a lot of innovation going on. And if there's a way to share that out beyond either face-to-face, in which case come and find me. I'll have a film crew all around me, so it should be easy to find me with the film cameras. But even, you know, on a blog, on Twitter, even just a photograph with a few lines that explain, I think I would love to hear more of your own stories of innovation. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask?
Yes, we have. Yeah, we have another question from Ratil here. He says that Ewan, you spoke about concepts, strategies, and tactics and skills that is implemented in environments other than the Arab environments. So, is these transferable tactics and skills and ideologies, sorry, not ideologies, strategies, can be implemented without obstacles, or how can you see the steps that can be taken in our environment?
It's a really good question, and I'm sat here in Scotland where today's maximum temperature is 4 degrees. It is a very different physical environment from where you are, and you're right that it's a different, I think, you know, it's different on so many levels. At the same time, most of the schools, you know, I do no work with any school in Scotland. Most of our work with schools is in Southeast Asia, places like Malaysia, Indonesia, China, Japan. We work with hundreds of schools in Australia, which is very different from the environment in Europe. 40% of my work is not actually with schools. It is with global companies. My biggest job at the moment is with ThyssenKrupp, the engineering firm, who have thousands of employees throughout the Middle East working with them. And the challenges for all these schools, regardless of culture, religion, weather, the challenges are the same when it comes to changing the way that we think. Changing someone's way of thinking is the hardest thing we can ever do, because human beings are not built to enjoy thinking, and thinking is hard work. And when you ask people to change what they do, you're asking people to change the way they think. So when I suggest it's worthwhile having one, and just one, very clear objective, it's because most people can cope with one thing to change, and that objective represents the one thing that we're asking them to change. The strategy part is vital, because you've got to provide some kind of route, some kind of way to get to where you want to get to. And you can't just say, if you're a school leader or if you're an innovator, you can't just say, we're going over there, and then not tell people how you think you're going to get over there. You have to have some idea, even if it changes after a while. And then, I'll be honest, when it comes to tactics, this is something that does change country to country. In some countries, you become a teacher not because you're a wonderful pedagogue, but because you have an intimate knowledge of Shakespearean plays, or you got the top mark in mathematics at your university. These two things do not correlate to being a wonderful teacher with a great set of tactics at your disposal, not all the time. And so, yes, I think that in terms of the team that you gather around to make an innovation happen, tactics are the point of difference. And the one thing I would say in the Middle East is there is a lot of strategy and a lot of objective around school buildings and around technology in those environments. I would love to see as much money and energy spent on pedagogy as are spent in those environments too, and those things. And I think that this point that's just been raised in the chat, it's not just about giving teachers more work to do. This is about activating every student in your countries as people who share the journey. Dylan Williams' work on formative assessment is pretty resolute in suggesting that really students need to share success criteria, that they need to understand as deeply as the teacher does what success looks like and how to get there. They also need to understand the goal of their learning for any given moment, and that doesn't mean that the teacher just tells them 3 or 4 times what the lesson objective is. It means that the students co-design those strategies, co-design those objectives with the teacher. And I think my final point, if you YouTube any of my talks, if you look up any talks I've given before, you'll know that I am incredibly passionate about students doing work that is real work. And learning happens when you don't just learn about something, but you learn to think differently. So learning about history is quite interesting maybe, but learning to think like a historian is a totally different experience. Learning about computer programming is one thing, but learning to think like a computer programmer, totally different again. And that is about developing student tactics and student skill. You can set the objective of your school being the #1 kind of engine house of innovation in whichever country you live in. That's a great objective to have. But if your tactics do include teaching kids how to use PowerPoint, you're never going to get there. You have to change the tactics as well, and that's there's nothing but hard work that changes those tactics and gets people's skills continually raised. So I hope that's answered your question. And if not, then you'll have to come back at me on Twitter or some other platform.
With that, we thank you so much, Ewan, for being with us today in this session. And we will see you next week in Guest Dubai.
I'm going to see in Guest in Dubai, and you'll be delighted to know that I've chosen my Easter holiday in Dubai as well. So I'm coming back at the end of the month to explore Dubai. Then. Yeah, I'm going to explore Dubai as a tourist for the first time ever, and I can't wait.
I think you will love it because the temperature is not as cold as where you are right now. Actually, not even close to that. So it's a sunny place, and you're coming during the best time of the year because it's almost spring.
That's it. Well, thank you all for coming along. It's a lot of people giving up their time on a Friday evening. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to have so many great questions as well from lovely educators. So thank you for the privilege to take part.
Thank you so much, and it's evening for us, so have a good night.
I will do. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.